Hello, I'm Nora, and welcome back to Novels with Nora. Today is another installment in my monthly Buzzwordathon vlogs. This month is July, so we are in for July Buzzwordathon. The title prompt this month is punctuation, so anything with like period, comma, the ampersand, any kind of punctuation. And then the cover prompt is technology. So I feel like I had a little bit of a harder time picking books this month just because finding books that have punctuation in the title is a little bit harder. I feel like there's a lot of things that have like apostrophes, as in like the Ornithologist Field Guide to Love, like showing ownership. I feel like we see some apostrophes for that, but like finding other things was a little bit difficult. And then technology on the cover was also a little bit difficult because I mostly read like fantasy and sci-fi. So I feel like on the sci-fi end it was a little bit easier, but in the fantasy, finding nothing. So I actually ended up finding an arc to read for the cover prompt this month. So without further ado, here are the books I'll be reading this month. For the title prompt, I will be reading Come and Get It by Kylie Reid because it has the ampersand here. And this cover is stunning. This is the Barnes & Noble exclusive edition, and I love this. I love the like neon green with the gold foiling. It's beautiful. And I have read Such a Fun Age from Kylie Reid. I read it in college for one of my honors courses. It was like a literary analysis course, so we did a lot of reading and then discussing books, and I loved Such a Fun Age, but I'm not sure if I loved it because of the writing or because of the setting I read it in, which I feel like any time where you're doing a discussion on a book, it makes you enjoy it a little, not always, but I feel like for me, it makes me enjoy it a little bit more because I'm having such more in-depth discussion and I'm engaging with the text a lot more. So I'm curious to see if Kylie Reid's writing still works for me outside of that setting. I'm only vaguely familiar with what this is about, mainly because I loved Such a Fun Age so much and had such a great reading experience with it that when I saw that she was coming out with a second book, I was like, well, of course I'm gonna pick it up. I also got this during Barnes & Noble's like 40% off hardcover sale, so naturally. But this, to my knowledge, follows a struggling college student who's like a super senior, so like she should have graduated, but she's still there and she's really struggling until this woman offers her an opportunity where like they both benefit from it. But while in this situation, she realizes that she is in for a lot more than she bargained for. And it says here, this novel explores the choices we make, particularly for the things that can and cannot be paid for. So I'm really curious to see what this is about. And Kylie Reid's novels do have a lot of social commentary in them, especially Such a Fun Age. So I'm actually really looking forward to this. And it's a bit longer than Such a Fun Age, I do think. So I'm really looking forward to this. I also just love when books are set in a college atmosphere. So I'm really actually very excited to read this, especially just like this cover is very intriguing to me because like, why is there a pig? Right. So I'm very much looking forward to this. There's a quote here from Emily Henry on the back. Kylie Reid is an expert at teasing apart the messy, complicated, nuanced layers of social dynamics and is a rare gift for making the unknown feel intimately familiar and the familiar feel brand new. And I do feel like that's a very good way to explain her writing. Is like she takes a situation and just like pulls it apart until you know it so intimately, but then like completely changes it and like gives you a whole new perspective on that situation. So I'm really looking forward to reading this. And then for the cover prompt, I have an arc of Inner Space by Jakub Szmalek. I do believe I'm pronouncing that right, but I did have to look up a name pronunciation, so we'll see. This is a Polish author. I think it is his debut novel, but I'm not entirely sure because it has been translated, so I don't know if he's published things in Polish before, and this is just his first English translation. I'm not sure, but I've already started this one, and it follows 3 perspective characters. So we have Lucy, who is an astronaut, and she is currently on a mission to the International Space Station where things are getting a little dicey up there. And then we follow Lucy's husband, Nate, who is still back on Earth with their daughter, and he just experiences a lot of anxiety, especially around Lucy's job, which like fair enough, she's an astronaut. And so he is like left on Earth trying to just like cope with everything that's happening and just like trying to be a good husband and a good father, but also just is filled with so much anxiety about everything that's happening, especially because things on this space station are going awry and he's just left to kind of pick up the pieces of their life. And then we also follow Steve Ayers, who is like, I'm not entirely sure what his position is, but he is like one of the head guys at, I'm not sure if he works for NASA, but he works for, like, he's a big, like, corporation guy, and he's kind of in charge of this space mission. And so we're getting all these different perspectives of, like, what's going on the space station, what's going on in, like, Houston at the headquarters, and then what's going on in Lucy's home. And this is so fascinating so far, especially for being a debut, but I am really enjoying it, actually. It took me a little while to get into. I'm, like, 60% in because it took me that long to really feel enveloped in the story, because it starts and we're just like introduced to characters like rapid fire, because there's the American team of astronauts that's up there that consists of 4 people, and then there's 2 Russian cosmonauts up there as well, and Lucy is like the mission commander, so she's in charge of all of them. And while they're up there, there is an unidentified ammonia leak in the space station, but they can't find where it's coming from, and there doesn't seem to be a source, but the levels of ammonia keep rising. And so it's like Lucy's job to figure out what's happening. But then also tensions between Russia and the United States are starting to like really ramp up, and like their co-working atmosphere really deteriorating. So Lucy's kind of put in this position where she needs to really be careful, because every action that she takes is going to be looked at by like a microscope, like at a microscopic level when she gets back, and she could like lose her job over some of the decisions that she could possibly be put in the position of having to make. So she's like really struggling up there, and it's just like there's a lot of stress on her because she can't tell her team what's happening, but like she's trying to deal with it all, but like they're all suspicious of everything that's happening. They're all suspicious of each other. It's just a whole mess happening. And then Nate back on Earth is like getting updates from Lucy. Like he can like FaceTime almost with her occasionally, and he can tell something's wrong, but because he doesn't like have the clearance to know what's going on, he like is just kept in the dark, and he's supposed to just like carry on with life. And he is a very interesting character because he was also like an incredibly smart man and had a lot going for him, and was like kept working on all these projects of like different like space missions and things, mostly to send like robots and things to different like moons. And then all the funding kept getting cut, so he eventually just decided, I'm sick and tired of like constantly being so excited about a project only to then have all the funding cut and we have to like completely scrap everything. And so he is now a stay-at-home dad so that Lucy can fulfill her dreams of being an astronaut while their daughter is still taken care of. So he's given up a lot for Lucy, but he's learning things about what happened on Lucy's first space mission that are kind of really wearing on him. And then Steve is in a position where he is really needing to like keep things moving and like keep things under wraps in a way, because like he's technically in charge, but there are people above him, and he knows that like every decision he makes and every decision that he thrusts onto Lucy, they have like massive like worldwide consequences. So every one of our characters is just under so much stress and in such stressful situations. But I'm really enjoying this, and something that I'm really liking about this is that it is very much a space horror, but it's very much done in a way that I've never read before, because most, if not all of the space horrors I've read previously have been like sci-fi and have been very much like advanced space technology, where it's like we're not worried about the spaceships. Like things have come so far that like what's happening in space is more important than us being in space. Where this is set in like current time, I think it's in like 2020, I want to say. And so it's very much like with the current technology that we have right now. And so a lot of like the horror that's happening in space right now is very much just like, I don't even think it's necessarily horror, but I am so afraid of space. I never once in my life have ever wanted to go into space. Like I in fact lay awake at night sometimes thinking, oh my god, I hope I never have to go to space, because it's so horrifying to me, which is why I like space horror, because it's scary for me. And I just feel like this captures that feeling so well, because we constantly have characters thinking like, okay, well if this goes wrong then we have to go into this action plan, and if that doesn't work then we have to do this, because one thing goes wrong on this space station and they're all dead. And so we're seeing a lot of them just like have these like incredibly full schedules of like needing to do all of these things just to keep the space station running. And like it's like exhausting, the monotony of it, but also it's just like how it is. And there's one character from the American team that's on the station that she is just experiencing a whole lot of like nausea and like motion sickness, because like in the anti-gravity there's like no up and down or like left and right, so you're just constantly feeling like out of place and like in motion. And so she's really dealing with that. I'm like, oh my god, that would be me, because I get so incredibly car sick. I'm like, she's me for real, and I don't want that. So like it's just so interesting to read space horror from this perspective, and I'm really loving it. But like I said, I am now 60% in, and it's taken me this long to really feel like I'm in the story, because I would pick it up, I'd read a chapter, and the chapters are quite long. I'd read a chapter, put it down for like 2 days, and then be like, I should probably keep reading, and then go back to it. So it's really taken me kind of a while to like really get into it. And I'm not sure if the problem that I'm having is the writing or the translation, because the way, I'm not sure how to describe this, but the way that some things are written, I feel like it's the translation, because I took a lot of Spanish classes. Follow me here for a second. And we used to have to read like these little books that were written specifically for like Spanish learners, and the way that I would translate those stories feels like how this is being translated, where it's like very blunt and very just like, okay, here you go, here's the information. There's no like depth to it, which feels like how I was translating the Spanish books into English. So I don't want to blame it on the translator, because like I'm sure it's not her fault. This is translated by Kaisa Bresford. I'm not sure if it's the writing or it's the translation or if it's a mix of the two, but something about this just feels like it's holding me at an arm's length and like I can't really get into it. So now that we are starting to like get some reveals, I feel like I'm a little bit more into it, but I'm still just feeling like the writing just feels a little clunky and a little like, I feel like something is missing from the writing. But otherwise, I'm really enjoying the plot. I do wish it moved a little bit faster in the beginning, but also like it couldn't, you know, like I see what's happening and I understand why it's moving at the pace it's going. It just took me a very long time to actually get into it, but I am really quite enjoying it, and I will be continuing it, especially because I have an arc. I would like to get this finished before it comes out. I think this comes out on the 15th or the 16th, whichever one is a Tuesday, but I am enjoying it. I just wish that it had gripped me in a little bit sooner. So I am going to continue reading this tonight and hope that it just continues to suck me in, because I am really enjoying it. I just feel like it could be doing more to really grab me in, because I feel like by the 60% mark, if I wasn't reading this as an arc or for Buzzwordathon, I probably would have DNF'd it, just because like it took me so long to really get into it. And so I fear that other readers are going to have that problem, because especially if they don't have any obligation to finish it, if it's taking them to 60% to really feel engulfed in the story, then they're going to put it down. So curious to see if it ends up being worth it in the end, so we'll see. But like I am enjoying it, and I think that if you're not into space horror, I probably wouldn't recommend this to you, just because I'm really reading it because like I can see where things are starting to fall apart and where we're gonna have a lot of issues, especially because something that I love in books is when we have like a group of people stuck in a place, and then like the tension between the people is really just starting to like get bad, and that's what's happening on the space station, because like there's no outlet for them. Like they have no way to burn off steam. Like Lucy keeps saying, like in her internal monologue, that like she's just constantly in flight or fight, but there's nowhere for her to go, and there's no way for her to like burn steam. So she's just like constantly on edge, and there's nothing she can do about it. And because her schedule is so like regimented, there's not even really time for herself. There's no like personal space on here, and it's just everything about it is like my worst nightmare. So I am enjoying it. I'm curious to see if it picks up from here, but that is where I'm at so far. I am also really excited to start this and actually read physically, because I like reading on my Kindle, but there's something about reading physically. So that is where I'm at so far, but I'm just going to keep reading and hope that it continues to grip me in. I just picked my book up to start reading again, and the chapters always start at the top with like a few lines from like a court hearing about what happened after the fact, and then it went right into the chapter, and it was explaining the physics of having sex in space. Much more difficult than you would imagine based on this description. And also it was really funny because the character who is talking about it, she's like, you would picture it being like super like romantic, like the stars reflected in your eyes, like seeing Earth from that distance away while you're like being intimate with someone. She's like, not at all, not in the slightest. So it's like funny, but at the same time like, girl, what are you doing? I'm gonna keep reading. Hello. Last night I finished Inner Space, and then this morning I had a little party to go to, so now I'm here to update you. I finished it. I think it's going to be a 3.5. Cheerio, my dog, just had dinner, so now he's doing his little post-dinner rabble-rouse. But I think it's going to be a 3.5 from me, just because, like I was telling you, from like the first half, really, from like until the 60% mark, I was really struggling to get into it, and it really felt like I was slogging through it, and it felt like it was taking so long. And then I read the last 40% all in one sitting. So like once I got into it, also then all the things I noticed in like the writing / translation, they didn't bother me anymore, because the story was like really moving, that I didn't feel the need to, like I just wasn't as focused on it, because I was more focused on the plot, which is a good thing, but that really just goes to show that the first like 60% moved so slowly. And the characters would be like having an internal monologue, or like they'd be like talking to someone, or like in the middle of like a really high intensity situation, and then all of a sudden we'd get like an insert of just like this whole long spiel where it just felt like the author wanted to like insert certain like thoughts or topics or themes, and like that's how he went about doing it, which I didn't love, because it really did take me out of the story. Like they were written well, like the most well-written parts in my opinion. I just feel like the transition between those and like the actual scenes were really where it felt choppy, and like I was being held at a distance was like in the transitions. But like those like inserts were written really well, and I was reading them and I was like getting lost in them, and then realizing we were in the middle of like a conversation, and now we're taking like 3 pages worth of like inner monologue. So I didn't love that. And then also I don't read a lot of books written by men for this particular reason, which is our main character, Lucy, who is up in space, is a woman, right? And the way that she was written, certain things, and then just the way that our other like male main character, Steve, interacted with women was like, what are we doing? Like Lucy was a wife and a mother, and it did not seem like she wanted to be a mother. Like everything about her character, she's super ambitious and super driven and just like truly focused on her career, none of that really lines up with her having a child, right? Because like she has wanted to be an astronaut like her whole life, it made it seem like, but then also like she had a child. So, and like, not that you can't do both, like obviously you can, but Lucy's character just did not feel like, also she had no real interactions with her daughter. There was one in like a flashback scene where she was like about to leave on a trip. She had like a little bit of time, and her daughter was like, please like come play with me, and she was like, okay fine, and then just like pretended to play with her while in her head was like only thinking about going on this trip for work. That's the only scene we have of her and her daughter together. So it just felt like, why make her a mother? Because like Eliza the daughter played, like you could have taken her out of the story and it would have been exactly the same, right? And then there were some scenes with Steve, he was like the deputy director for crewed space flights at NASA, and the way he just interacted with women was like, the author was like trying to cover his tracks to make sure that women like wouldn't call him a misogynist. So like he interacted with this one character who like Steve is in a higher position than her, but like he needs her to work with him, and so he's like trying to like make a power play, and he's like, ooh, should I ask her to pour me a cup of coffee? But no, because that puts her in like a womanly position, and I don't want to do that because I don't want to be seen as a misogynist, so I'm not gonna do that. And I was like, right, like I see what we were trying to do here, but by you saying all of that like in your internal monologue, it's the same thing. It's the same as just saying it, you know? And then there was another scene where he was talking about this woman, and he was like completely unprompted was like, she's a little overweight, but it's fine because she's really good at her job and we were lucky she was there that day. There's other ways that you could have said that other than she's a little overweight. Like it felt a little like, oh, okay. And it was just things like that where it was like, come on, like what are we doing? Just the way that this man was writing these women was like, he was trying so hard to not come across as a misogynist. And like, I don't think he is, but then the way he was writing just made it feel like he was like really afraid that people were going to take it that way. And so he was doing everything in his power to not make it seem that way, which was then just too much. So I didn't love that. But I will say there was a very interesting passage in the book where Lucy and one of the other crew members was going on a spacewalk to go like see if something was working on the ship. And they were talking about how it is like deafeningly silent because there's no noise in space. And then there was a conversation about how people with disabilities might be in a better position to be astronauts because like they won't be bothered by the constant noise or then the lack of any noise, because if they're hard of hearing or deaf, they won't have that issue. And then also they were talking about how people with autism who might not experience the need for like human contact or human connection might also be better as astronauts because then they're in a position where they don't really have that. And it was a really interesting conversation, much better worded than what I'm doing it now, of how people with disabilities would possibly, because we don't know, be like really good as astronauts, but because we don't put them up for that possibility, we don't know. But like a lot of the things that astronauts have to do, like using your, like people who don't have use of their legs might be really great astronauts because they rely mostly on their hands to like pull themselves along because there's no gravity. So it's like certain disabilities that make people at a disadvantage on Earth could actually put them at a huge advantage in space, but because we're not willing to try that, we don't know. And I thought that was a really interesting conversation and showed that this author can handle like harder, more controversial, I guess, topics really well. So the way that the women were treated, I was just like, what are we doing? And there were some things where like Lucy was talking about missing her child at one point, and she was like, I wonder if like the male astronauts have to deal with this too, or if like the job is enough for them and so they don't like, and worrying about your kids is only like a womanly issue, which it wasn't worded like that, but it was like, okay, so we're acknowledging that she has a child, but like she never really thinks about her daughter. So it was just things like that that just didn't really feel natural, I guess. All that being said, I feel like my biggest issue with this book is the synopsis, because it is not at all how the book actually is. Because the synopsis says that I'm actually just going to read it to you. So the synopsis says, American and Russian astronauts are trapped together in the International Space Station as war breaks out in Ukraine and life support functions begin to fail in this action-packed debut techno-thriller. When an ammonia leak threatens the astronauts on International Space Station, NASA directs Lucy Poplonsky, one of the ISS first female commanders, to investigate the cause. Russia has just invaded Ukraine and tensions are running high. Could the leak be a brazen act of sabotage? The Russian cosmonauts aboard deny tampering with the ship's systems and insist the issue stems from the American side. As levels of the poisonous gas rise, Lucy's investigation shatters trust between the Russian and Western crews, exposing deep fissures in the partnership thousands of miles below. Intense and unrelenting, inner space questions what truly draws us to the urge to explore the unknown, selfish ambition or an instinct to run away from the entrenched troubles of Earth. And most of that is true. Like the tensions on the space station between like the US and Russia, yes, there. The ammonia leak, yes. Lucy being the commander, but I don't think it said anything about her being the first female commander. It was more just like me being a female commander puts me in a position where I really have to show that I can handle this. So don't really know about that. But the part where it says, as war breaks out in Ukraine, no. And that I think was very misleading because it makes it seem like the whole reason that the tensions are happening on the space station is because of the war in Ukraine and because of Russia invading Ukraine. But that's not the case at all. Russia invading Ukraine has nothing to do with this book in the slightest. And I feel like that was really, I don't want to say deceptive, but just wrong in the marketing, because then it makes it seem like everything that's happening on the ship and the tensions rising is because of what's happening on Earth with Russia and Ukraine. And that's not the case. By the end of the book, we don't even get, the only mention we have of Ukraine is that Russia has amassed troops at the border. That's it. So Ukraine has nothing to do with this novel in the slightest. So I just feel like I'm not sure why that was included in the synopsis. And I'm also wondering, because this is an arc, if that'll change when the book actually comes out. But today's Saturday for me. The book comes out on Tuesday. So I'm very curious to see if that'll change. I don't know. By the time you're seeing this, it'll be next Saturday. And so it'll have been out. So I'm curious to see. I'll probably add a little something in the description, because that's not what happens in this book at all. And also, it didn't really feel like a thriller. It felt just kind of like I was reading a fiction novel. I don't really know how to explain it or describe it, but I think I had mentioned that it was kind of like a space horror. And yes, a little bit, because there was even a part in the book where it mentioned if this was a horror movie, this is where the monster would come out and start getting us, but there are no monsters here, it's just us humans. And I was yeah, and somehow, and then it even said humans are enough, and I was exactly, because seeing Lucy and one of the other crew members going on this spacewalk and just realizing how scary space is and how one slip up sends you spiraling to an icy death, horrifying. It is scary, but that wasn't really the point. But I'm also then not sure what the point is. I think maybe to highlight the rift between Russia and the US, but also I'm not sure that was really needed. I don't know. This book just feels like it was a fun read, especially towards the end. I did enjoy it, but it just felt a little what are we doing? Especially with that synopsis being what I had in my head going into it, and then that not being what it was. Calling it a techno thriller, I wouldn't really say it was a thriller. There was one scene that was maybe a little bit thrilling. But then it jumped ahead to the point where then it was all of the tension that we built up kind of just dissipated and didn't really build into anything. It's going to be 3.5 because I did enjoy reading it. It just felt a little why? Clearly this author did a lot of research into space, because a lot of the things I don't know that much about space, but seemed like he did his research, but it just, I don't know, something about it just felt I'm not really sure what we're trying to do with this novel. I don't know what it was trying to say. I think that there were some interesting conversations about how we call it the International Space Station, and it's supposed to be a place away from the conflicts of Earth, but all of the issues happening on Earth end up reflected in what's happening in the space station with the crews, and how politics of Earth affect literally everything. I keep starting my sentences and then stopping them because I'm not even really sure what I want to say. But this novel was just there were parts of it that were really good, and then parts of it that weren't so good. So it's going to be a 3.5, and I would recommend picking it up if you're interested in that and if you can slug through that first 60%. But I had a decent time with it. It just kind of felt I got to the end and I was that's it. I felt I was let down with it, and it had built up to something and then just kind of fizzled out. And so it kind of, I don't want to say it felt like a waste of time, because it didn't. I did enjoy it. I liked learning about space in this way, and now obviously there were probably some creative liberties taken, so I can't rely on this knowledge that I learned as the hardcore straight facts knowledge of space. But I will say clearly the author did his research and put a lot of that into this book, and I did enjoy those aspects, because it's the different protocols and the different training sequences and the day-to-day life of being on the space station was really interesting. But I wish we had gotten more of that. And then Nate's perspective back on Earth, I'm not entirely sure that it was needed, because nothing he did really ended up mattering in the end. That's kind of what it feels like. Is it feels that every choice that the characters made didn't really end up mattering, other than a few of the things that Lucy did. So I don't know, it just kind of felt it was we were building and building and building just to then go nowhere with that. We built and then we ended. So I think that's really how I'm feeling, is just kind of I felt there should have been a punchier ending or something more towards the end there, but there wasn't. So those are my thoughts on Inner Space. I enjoyed it, and I'd be curious to see what this author does in the future, but I don't know. Also, then there was a note from the translator at the end, and she was talking about how she like knew nothing about space, so then having to translate that from Polish was like a bit of a challenge for her. And I did appreciate that because I can see how that would be really hard, but it wasn't even necessarily the scenes in space that caused the writing to feel clunky. It was just like the conversations and the transition sentences. So I don't know. I think that it was a fun book to read. Like, I don't regret reading it, but I do feel like it felt like it was building up to something more and then it just didn't. Like, the way it ended, I was like, that can't be the end, but it was. So that's Inner Space. And now I am going to get dinner and then probably watch a movie because it's a Saturday night and I think I want to watch a movie. But then I'm going to start Come and Get It either tonight or tomorrow morning, and I will update you once I have some thoughts on that. Hello, coming at you from a crazy angle because I am getting ready for bed. It is currently 1 a.m. Yeah, I had dinner. I got myself Wingstop for dinner. It was really wonderful, very delicious. And because my whole family was out, I had the house to myself. So I watched my favorite YouTuber, Timmy's Takeout. Subscribe to him, he's fantastic. And I just had a really wonderful evening in. I read the first chapter of Come and Get It, and I was like a little confused at first just because it didn't really feel like what I had thought the book was about, because in the first chapter we follow Agatha as she's coming to the school to interview or like conduct an interview for a book, I guess, that she's writing about weddings, because she's done a book about like grief and funerals, and then a book about like parties and celebrations, and now she's doing a book about weddings. But during this interview she is realizing that she doesn't really care about weddings, and she cares more about like what these girls have to say and like the culture that they're part of, like as like girls on this campus. And like especially because like the girls that she's interviewing are like kind of wealthier but like don't really seem to understand their privilege. And so then she's talking to the RA Millie, who we know is like one of our main characters, and how she was kind of like eavesdropping on the interview and like hearing the perspective of this girls and like how she sees them and views them versus how they see and view themselves, which was really fascinating. And it's clear from here that Agatha's research is going to shift and probably be more about like the culture of girls on campuses. I think that's probably what her research is going to be about, and she's going to like pull Millie in to be part of that research, which is then what the synopsis talks about with Agatha, a writer and visiting professor itching for her next big topic, offers Millie an easy yet unusual opportunity for them to help each other further their own interests. So I feel like they're going to be working together on Agatha's research. So I also really liked the writing. Like, I felt very into it, but also like research is something, especially research like this where you're just like talking to people and like getting like their thoughts and perspectives. That's the kind of research I want to be conducting, so I really enjoyed reading that. But I'm still really enjoying Kylie Reed's writing. It was only one chapter, which was like 24 pages, but like I really enjoyed it. I liked the character voice that we have so far, but only 24 pages in. I did really enjoy that chapter though. I was like hooked in the whole time, and I do think I have the audiobook for this either on hold or already checked out, but I just read it with my eyeballs. So it is currently 1:01 a.m. I'm going to put this down and get some sleep and then continue reading tomorrow, because I did really enjoy it so far, and I'm very curious to see, based on the conversation that Agatha had with those three girls, where her research is going to go from here and how Millie is going to get involved. But I really liked what I read so far, so like I said, I'm gonna go to sleep and we'll continue reading tomorrow. Good morning. It is now Tuesday, and last night I read a very good amount of Come and Get It. I was on page 25 and now I'm on page 105, and I'm really having a very good time because this is set in college in 2017 and it feels very much of that time. Now, I wasn't in college in 2017. Let me make that clear. I didn't go to college till 2022, but I was like obsessed with watching like college move-in vlogs and like what I got for college halls and like college dorm halls. So it's like I was very steeped in that like culture, I guess you could say, and this feels very reminiscent of that time. Because our one main character, Millie, she is an RA in this dorm, and the dorm is for like transfer students and like scholarship students. And then we have Agatha, who is a professor and writer, who's like, in the first chapter she was like interviewing students for what she thought her book was going to be about, and now she's kind of like switching things up. But then we also have these three girls who are living in this like suite together, and we're just kind of following all of them, and all of their stories are like very much like normal things that would happen to like normal people. But like the secondhand embarrassment I get from this is so real, because it's like when you go to college, especially as like when you're new there, so like as a freshman or like as a transfer student, when you don't know anyone, you might not like everyone around you, but you want everyone to like you because you don't know anyone. So it's like you want to be liked so that you're not alone, and that is perfectly captured in here. And I'm only on chapter Yeah, I'm only on chapter 6, but like everything that's happened so far, I'm like, oh my god, like I feel like I was there for it, because there was one scene where Millie, as an RA, she was like meeting the other RAs for her floor and just like, you know, meeting everyone, and she was sitting in a beanbag chair, and she like went to introduce herself and like tried to sit up, but like it didn't work, so she had to like do like this awkward like climb up out of it. And I was like, that is exactly what like the first like introductions of college feel like, when you don't know anyone but you're trying to make a good impression even though you don't really like the people you're trying to impress. It's just like the constant performance of college is captured so perfectly, and like the secondhand embarrassment you get, but also just like the way that I feel like I am there with these characters, because we also saw Millie going into this suite of girls to try and like help sort out their living situation, because one girl brought like so much stuff, which so real, because it's like when you're buying all the stuff, it's like you're packing up your entire life to take somewhere else. You don't realize how much stuff that genuinely is until you get into that room and you're like, this room is so tiny and I'm living here with other people. All my stuff feels like too much stuff. But like this girl, she was like, oh, like I can make it work. But they moved her into this single, and because it was like a single and then a double within the suite, and they moved her into there, and she's like, okay, like it's fine, I can still make friends, like it'll be fine, like we'll all still be friends together, it'll be good. And then she's laying there at night trying to fall asleep, feeling just like very sad and alone, and she can hear the other two girls in the other room like giggling and like getting to know each other and like having a good time while she's in the room by herself. And that I felt that, because that is how college feels like. It feels like everyone is like making friends and like getting along, and you're just like stuck and alone, even though like technically everyone feels that way, but like you don't see it that it is just capturing it perfectly. And then we also have like, there's a lot of characters in here, and they're all not really the best people, but in ways that it's like so believable, because there's like Agatha, who is the writer and the professor, and we saw in the first chapter happens like after the rest of the chapters, like plot wise, but Agatha talks about how, because originally she's writing about like marriage and like the celebration of a wedding, and she says that she was married to someone but it didn't work out, and then in a subsequent chapter we see what happened, and she was with this dancer Robin, and we saw their relationship just fall apart, but like for entirely two real reasons, and then they like stayed together for, again, like real reasons. And it's just, everything in here is like so believable, but it's like taking like a situation that would normally happen to people and just like blowing it up and making it like, just like really exploring all the little facets of it and making you feel so uncomfortable with it, but like in the best way possible. I really love Kylie Reid's writing, because she takes situations that like could happen to people and just really explores them in so much depth, where by the end you're just like really uncomfortable. And that's exactly how this is. It's like, especially with Agatha's story, it's like seeing her relationship, it was like, oh my god, like they were both making not the smartest decisions, but it was coming from places of hurt. So like you knew why they were making the decisions, you just wish they weren't, but it was like, oh my god, like I can see this happening to someone. Like this is so real and raw, but also just like explored in a way that's like, okay, that's enough. And so I'm really having a very good time with this. Like I'm absolutely loving it, having such a wonderful time. It really feels like I am there with these characters and like I'm experiencing what they're experiencing, which I think is perfect. It does really have like a very meandering narrative. It's definitely character driven. This is not a plot driven story in the slightest, and there are a lot of characters. So I can see why a lot of people wouldn't like this. I don't think it's rated super highly, but it's working really well for me, because these characters, like I'm really enjoying reading from them, and I really like the setting that we're in. As someone who was just in college not that long ago, I'm really like feeling, it's like bringing up memories of the way that they felt. I also felt those things. So it's really working very perfectly for me, but I can see why it wouldn't work for everyone. But again, working perfectly for me. So I'm just going to keep reading. Today I am going to see the new Superman movie. I'm very excited. So I'll probably give you my review of that too, because I love superhero movies, okay? I'm not really big into like reading comics, just because I feel like there's so many and it's hard to get into, but I like love superhero movies, DC, Marvel, like I'm into all of it. So I'm really excited for this movie, especially because it's like, it's colorful. They're bringing color back into superhero movies. So I'm very excited to see that, and I am seeing it today. So I will be continuing with this and giving you my review of Superman later in the day. Hey, okay, so you know how yesterday I was all excited and I was like, I'm going to see Superman today and I want to spend the day reading and then I'll give you my update. Yeah, so we went and we saw Superman and it was very exciting. However, the theater was like 9,000 degrees. It was already like 80 something degrees outside, and then when you walked inside it was like, okay, it's a little bit cooler, and then by the time we like got everything, like our popcorn and everything, and got situated, I was sweating profusely. Like, it was so hot in there, and I thought it was just me because the medication I'm on makes me like heat intolerant, and I was like, maybe it's just me, like I'll cool down, it'll be fine. And then everyone I was with was like, no, it's hot in here, and I was like, chill. Okay, so luckily I had a big claw clip in my bag that I could put my hair up, but I was so hot and sweaty the whole rest of the day. But as for my review of Superman, it was so good. Now, granted, I have not read any of the Superman comics, but I have seen, I think, all of the Superman movies with Henry Cavill. I thought they were just okay. This, beautiful, wonderful, fantastic, 5 stars, amazing. We are bringing hope and joy and fun and whimsy back to the superhero genre. I feel like the whole point of Superman is like he is hope for the people, and this movie really showed that. I feel like Henry Cavill's version of Superman was like very stoic and kind of apathetic, like not entirely, but like kind of, especially like comparatively, where this version of Superman, beautiful, stunning, gorgeous. Like, you could tell that like everything he did was motivated out of like a love for the people and just like wanting to be the best version of himself, and just like the conversations about humanity and like how, yes, like your parents kind of shape you a little bit, but also like it's their job to like help you shape yourself into the person you want to be, not who they want you to be. And just like the conversations about like humanity and like what it means to be human, wonderful. It was so perfect. It was just bright and fun and colorful, which I feel like color has been missing from superhero movies for so long. They've all been so dark. Like, we've all seen the memes of like when the movie's so dark you can't even see what's happening on the screen, and it's like, yeah, exactly. And this does not have that. It was so bright and fun, and like the music selections in it just made it even more fun, and it was just so fun, I really feel like is the best word. And like, yeah, there were like deeper conversations there for sure, because I do feel, some people say that like superhero movies are like superfluous and like don't actually have any substance to them. That's not true at all. And this one especially, like there's a lot to be said here, but this was just so wonderful, and like everyone did such a fantastic job. Let me say, Lex Luthor in this movie, bald like no one's ever been bald before. Yeah, it was so good. When he rubbed his bald head, I said, that's a baldy for sure. I said, I've never seen anyone be this bald before. And I feel like he did such a good job. I don't know that actor's name. Anthony Holt? ? Very fantastic job. And then Rachel Brosnahan is Lois Lane. Beautiful, stunning, gorgeous. She played Lois in such a wonderful way, where she just like had so much agency of her own, and she wasn't just like some damsel in distress waiting for Superman to come save her. She really was like there on the front lines. Like, first and foremost, she was a reporter, and she was standing 10 toes down to get that story, and I loved that. Also, her outfits ate every time. When she was wearing that little like suit set where it was like the pants with the t-shirt but like the suit like vest, ate. Costuming department ate with that one. Crypto, how could we not talk about Crypto? Really reminds me of my own little dog who like doesn't really listen but is such a cutie and has one floppy ear. So like, just, it was such a beautiful movie. I loved it so much. I have nothing but good things to say about it, and I would highly recommend it. I feel like even if you aren't super familiar with Superman, like you definitely still enjoy this, because it doesn't like, I don't know, I just feel like this was such an enjoyable movie. Like, there were just so many fun characters, and like it was funny but also had so much heart. It was wonderful, and I'm gonna go see it again because I had that much of a good time with it. But that being said, because then I came home and was just like so hot, and because of my heat intolerance, once I get hot and sweaty, I stay hot and sweaty until I take like a cold shower. So I ended up doing that, and then that just kind of was like my whole night, because then I was just like exhausted from being so hot and sweaty. So I then did not read the rest of the night. But today I am hoping to read some more. I am working on a paper for my one class, and that's kind of taking up a lot of my time, but I do really want to read today because I'm really loving my book, and every time I'm not reading I'm thinking I want to be reading. But I'm hopeful that today I will get some reading done. But yeah, go see Superman. It was really fantastic. It was so fun and funny, and I feel like it's perfect for like all ages. Like, I went with me, my younger brother, and my grandma, and we all had a good time. So like, if you have kids, take them to go see it. If you have grandparents, take them to go see it. If you have yourself, go see it. It was just so wonderful, so wonderful. And I'm just, also today, James Gunn, the director, made the first official post for the Supergirl movie that's coming next year. I am a huge Supergirl fan. Okay, still have not read any of the comics, but I watched the CW Supergirl show with Melissa Benoist. Ate it up. I love Supergirl. Oh, her suit with the pants. I don't think we're getting the pants in this movie, but I'm just so excited. I love Supergirl. I love everything she stands for. I love that she's stronger than Superman. I'm just excited. Okay, I feel like fun and joy and like hope has been re-injected into the superhero genre, and I'm here for it. Okay, I love a superhero movie. I think they're fun. So I'm glad that they're actually like being fun and not super like dark and heavy. were like having some fun and humor in them again. So I'm having a great time, but I am going to be reading today because I know that's actually what you're here for. I did in fact achieve my goal of reading this evening. I started on page like 105 and now I'm on page 250, so read quite a big chunk. And I will say I've been listening to the audiobook and I'm loving the audiobook because this is set in Arkansas. The audiobook narrator has like a southern accent for some of the characters and it's wonderful, and really just like the way that some of the characters speak, it's like written as if they were speaking with a southern accent, which is very hard to explain. But like if a character says, well, I'm gonna go here, like in a southern, I cannot do a southern accent, but if he says that in a southern accent, instead of saying like I am, like I apostrophe am, it'll be AHM, so that you really emphasize like the breathiness of it. And so having the audiobook with it has been a really lovely experience. But I'm also just still really loving this because it's like you see these characters making bad decision after bad decision, but also like the way that they're justifying it to themselves is exactly how like a girl in college in 2017 would justify it to herself. So it's like, yes, they're making bad decisions, but also you see exactly how and why they're making that decision. I'm like, oh my god, Kennedy, she is, I think, one of my favorite characters to read from, just because she feels so like raw and real, where she's like trying to make friends, but she's also thinking through like every possible scenario of how her trying to make friends is going to be perceived by the people she's trying to be friends with. And she just always ends up like talking herself out of it. And just like the scenarios that she's running through, it's just like, yeah, like I see that, especially because it's like going to college in a new place, because I went to school kind of far away from home, like not super far, but like far enough where I didn't know anyone. And so going in, like it's really scary, and it's like you want to make friends, but also you know that like you're being judged so harshly within like the first few seconds of meeting someone because you're meeting so many people. And so you just like really, I really sympathize with Kennedy, because it's like, yeah, she's making bad decisions, but at the same time I completely understand why she's making those decisions. And then Millie and the decision she's making, she has two best friends who are also RAs, and the way that they kind of just not like hive mind, but it's like she has something where she'll be like, I don't know, I'm kind of like thinking about this, and they're like, oh my god, yes, do it, like it's gonna be so good for you. And like they're not really thinking through the implications of what that's going to do for her life, because they're just like, yeah, that'll be like cool, go for it. And so she's just like, yeah, okay, like listening to her friends, and you're sitting there thinking like, oh my god, no, don't do that, don't listen to them. But because that's who she's talking to and they're both like, yes, go for it, she does it. And so it's like, oh my goodness. So you see exactly how all of these characters are getting into these situations, but it feels both super unrealistic and super realistic at the same time, which is crazy. And I just love Kylie Reid's writing. Like it is just so wonderful. I'm having such a great time with this. I just like cannot wait to keep reading, because we get quite a few different characters and I'm loving all of them, and like the roommate conflicts that are happening, and just the way where it's like Millie is technically in a position of authority as an RA, but she's also still, she's only 24, so she's still a kid herself. And so her trying to like be an authority figure for these other girls who don't really see her as an authority figure, it's just, there's so many like societal scripts at work here, and like everyone just, oh my god, I am absolutely eating this up. And it really feels like being at college, because when you go to college there are just so many like unspoken rules that you're just like expected to get with, and I feel that so strongly in here, and I am eating it up. Like the research that Agatha's doing, and her as a character, and the way she's justifying the unethical journalism that she's doing, everything in here is just like, yeah, you're making a bad choice and you're making bad decisions, and I see that, but I also see why you're making those decisions and like what has led you to making those, and I kind of see that too. So I just know that like no one's gonna have a happy ending in here. I can just feel it, but I'm eating it up in the meantime. Like Kylie Reid's writing is just so digestible, and it's like so gripping that it's like every time you turn the page, you're like, you just want to keep turning the page. So I'm having a really great time with this, but I am going to go to sleep and continue tomorrow. I have officially finished Come and Get It, and it is a 4.5 star. Oh, it matches his collar. Cute. I really enjoyed this. It's not a 5 star, just look, it's not a 5 star because I feel like there are certain things that I don't really even know. It didn't feel like 5 star. Okay, there we go. But I did really enjoy it. The writing was stunning. I really like Kylie Reid's writing. It really just works for me. And then the setting of like being on this college campus and just like all of these different girls just like trying to fit in different ways and like not quite making it work, but also kind of carving out different spaces for themselves. And also the conversation that wasn't technically had, but that I was having with myself in my head while reading, is that RAs are still like kids themselves. Like, yes, when you go to college, you're technically an adult, but like, are you really? No, because the RAs in like the dorm that I lived at, first of all, my one roommate was an RA. She should not have had, like, an RA should not have had to be the one to be handling this, right? Because especially as what happened in the end, like we needed, like, even when like they called 911, they were like, we need an adult. And they knew that the RA couldn't be that for them because they needed someone who like could actually handle the situation, not also be panicking. They needed someone who could like, they needed a professional, really, because RAs are just kids. And like, granted, Millie is 24, so she's like a little bit older, but she's still just a kid herself, you know? And that's how RAs are. They're expected to like handle all of the nonsense that happens with all the kids that they're supposed to be like taking care of, when it's like, first of all, they're not getting paid nearly enough for this, and second of all, they are just kids themselves. Like, they're dealing with all of their own things and having to take care of all these kids. Like, it's just, I imagine, such a stressful job. And like, when Millie like misses a phone call on like the RA phone, she feels like such a deep sense of guilt, and it's like she shouldn't be having to deal with that, because all of these issues should not be getting put onto her or onto any RAs. And like, I understand like we have to have them, like it is what it is, but like they should be getting paid more for sure, and they should also be getting better trainings. Like, they should be getting like just more I don't know what kind of training they do get, but they should be getting more, because I think that also then parents tend to blame the RAs because they're like the authority figures. They're just kids themselves. So I think that that's a conversation that was evoked from the book that I feel like didn't need to be said because it was very clear. But also just, I loved it, okay? It was really wonderful. The conversations about, this is the Barnes & Noble exclusive edition, and there were a few, there was like, I think just the like gold foil on the cover, and then there is this like one tiny little chapter at the end after the acknowledgements, the making of Come and Get It, and it says, in many ways, Come and Get It is about what we hear, what we overhear, and what we take on as our own. And that's kind of like exactly what this is about, like perfectly encapsulates it, because Agatha's research that she does very unethically, like, whoa, she is just like eavesdropping on these girls to then like write pieces about them. And so she's just like eavesdropping, but she doesn't know them. And even at the end, she's talking to them, and the girl, she's like, you could have just like talked to us, like you could have just like asked us questions and we would have given you the answers. Now, they might not have been as like raw and real as if like you eavesdropping, but like that's unethical. You shouldn't be doing that anyway, especially for research. But like, just a lot of the times, like, you just have to ask, and you can like get a lot of places just by asking. And then at the end of this chapter, she says, the fiction I want to read places the best and worst parts of a person on the same page and lets the reader make up their own mind. And that is very much also this book, because like I've been saying, these characters aren't really good people, but also like, what is a good person? Especially in college. College is like the messiest time of your life. Like, you make mistakes, but you learn and you grow from them, and that's exactly how these characters are. Especially like Millie and Kennedy. I would say we have like three main characters. There's Millie, the RA, Kennedy, who is her resident, and then Agatha, the researcher. And there's a lot of like other like side characters who like play a big role, and sometimes our names got a little confused for me, but those are our main three. And all of them just like, they're not really good people, but like they're not supposed to be, because like they're very real. These are people like that you would meet, and like they all make bad decisions, and they all justify those decisions to themselves, but in the end realize, okay, maybe I shouldn't have done that. But also like, things work out for them in the end, not the way they really would have wanted them to, but like they work out. So they're like, well, like no harm done, I guess, technically. And so it's very interesting, where it's not like outlined, yes, this is a bad person. It's like they make good and bad decisions for good and bad reasons. They're just so real, and that's why I love Kylie Reid's writing, because her characters are like, they're real people. It's like they don't want to be bad people, but like they just kind of are. And so it works so well for me. I really loved it. And also just like, she mentioned like a lot of what came from here. She was reading a book about like money in college and like the culture of money in college, and then also like did her own research interviewing college students and how that really like informed it. And like, you can tell, and this doesn't feel like a grown woman sat down and was like, I remember when I was in college, and just like kind of made things up. This is like the college experience, because it's like, when you go to college, you have this like vision in your head of what you think it's going to be, because of like all of the media and like movies especially that portray college as this like crazy fun time, and then you get there and you're like, where's that? And so this, I'm so glad that she did that research, because it really helped to strengthen this, and it just it was so wonderful. I think especially being so recently out of college and still kind of like in the same age group as these characters, it really hit home for me, and it just worked so perfectly. And how like there was one unrealistic thing, and it was when Kennedy was in a women's and gender studies intro class, and they were going to like a departmental barbecue for them, and they're like, oh, they're almost out of food. I was a women's and gender studies major, and one thing about our little get-togethers, we always had too much food. But side note completely, but that's like the one thing where I was like, I don't know. But like, even then, that's just kind of silly. I loved this so much. And the conversations on like race and class and money and like socioeconomic status and just like how you view yourself versus how others view you, which is so prevalent when you go to college. Because it's like, Millie even states at one point where it's like, she doesn't really like all the people that she's meeting, but she wants them to like her. And that is exactly what, like, at least like the first like week of college, that's what it's like, because you're meeting so many people and you want them all to like you, even though you don't like them. So it's like you kind of change yourself for like every person that you meet to like try and get them to like you, even though you don't like them. And this just like fit that so perfectly, and it was just so wonderful. And like I can see why people wouldn't like it, because it's messy and there's not really a whole lot of plot. Like, not really. Like, yes, like obviously every book has some kind of a plot, but this is definitely like a character driven, like meandering story that just really focuses on like the good and bad choices people make, and like what leads them to make those choices, and how they shape themselves based on other people's perspectives of them. It was so wonderful. 4.5 stars. I feel like in saying all that, I want to talk myself into a 5-star, but like it's not, because the way that it wrapped up, it was like, oh my God, I feel like that was really a whirlwind there at the end. Like it doesn't feel like a 5-star. It's a 4.5, and I'm very solid in that rating, but this was such a fantastic time. If anything I said about it sounds interesting to you, I highly recommend you pick it up. It is like 400 pages, but I read it in like 2 or 3 sittings. So also, I love the cover. This one is a sticker, this one's not, and that kind of pisses me off, but I love this. I can see myself rereading it and like annotating it because I liked it that much, and it just felt so true to the college experience. And like there was like altercations between roommates, everything about it was just so true to college, in my opinion and my perspective and my experience. But I loved it so much, and like all of our characters, like you could just see like the gears turning in their head, but them still choosing to make the bad decision because it kind of like works out for them. It was wonderful. I really loved it. I see why people wouldn't like it, because everything is so messy, the characters are not super lovable, and there's not a whole lot of plot. So like, right, I see it, but for me it really worked. And I will be continuing to pick up everything from this author because she continues to slay. So I'm going to continue to consume her slay. So those are my thoughts on that. And for you, it'll be in like a few seconds. For me, it'll be in like an hour because I need to work on this paper. But then I'm going to give you my final thoughts on both books and wrap everything up. Okay, while I'm over here putting Come and Get It back on the bookshelf, I thought we could film the little wrap up over here. So we started this Buzzwordathon with the cover prompt actually, which was technology. And I read Inner Space by Jakub Smalek. And this was a 3.5. As I'm sure you could tell in my review section of this book, my thoughts were quite complicated and all over the place because I really liked the space aspects and a lot of the conversations that were had, but I didn't love the writing or translation style, nor did I love how the female characters were handled most of the time. So I did settle on a 3.5, and I will have my full review for this book linked down below because I read it as an arc. When I read things as an arc, I really try to make my reviews like super in-depth, and I do feel like I really captured all of my thoughts in here and like a lot of the problems I had with it. So I will link my review in the description because I think that reading my thoughts, I had a little time to like write it, revise it, and really like get my thoughts articulated well, because I did really like a lot of this. I really liked the depictions of space and how claustrophobic and scary it truly is to go to space, not having really any backup. If communication gets lost, like you're truly up there alone, especially if you don't trust your crew and your crew doesn't trust you, like the issues that can cause. And I did really enjoy it. I feel like the synopsis of the book was a little misleading with like making it seem like the Russian invasion of Ukraine was like the catalyst for the issues, and that wasn't the case at all. So I just feel like it wasn't marketed in the way that I think it should. It was also marketed as like a techno thriller, and this was like fiction to me. It wasn't super thrilling. Like, yes, we had like the issues and like trying to like solve this mystery, but I wouldn't really say it was mystery or thriller. It felt more in like a space fiction for me. So 3.5, I did enjoy it, and I would recommend it if you're looking for something that is set in space, but like in our current type of space, not like futuristic space, because like Dead Silence is my favorite space horror, but that's like very clearly like futuristic sci-fi space horror. And while this isn't technically horror, if you're afraid of space, similar to the way I am with like the claustrophobia and the way that like everything is like hinged on a contingency plan and like everything is just scary, then I would recommend this, because I do think it really accomplishes like the space aspect really well. Just don't expect super great female characters or super great writing, because like the writing, like it's not bad, but there are parts of it that really take you out. Like I don't think I mentioned this in my review that I gave you, but in my written review, when the characters are like talking or like having any kind of dialogue or even just like having inner monologues, sometimes there are just like these injections of like, in the Kindle version at least, like 2 to 3 pages of like sidetracked conversation. And the thing is, those conversations were interesting, but they did take away from the actual plot that made it feel really choppy. And like them separately, very fascinating, but when you put them together, it just made things feel choppy and like it wasn't like a smooth narrative. So keep that in mind. But I did enjoy it. 3.5. Would recommend it to a specific audience. Who that audience is? People who want to read about space in a fictionalized setting, but with a more realistic depiction of space. That's who I recommend this to. And then, as you just saw me finish, for the title prompt, Punctuation, we had Come and Get It with our ampersand here, and I loved this. I feel like the more I talk about it, the more I'm talking myself into giving it a 5-star, so you'll have to check back in for my monthly wrap-up to see if it ends up getting bumped up to a 5, because right now I am sitting at a 4.5, and I am confident with that, but I feel like the more I think about it and the more I talk to people about it, the more my rating has a chance of going up, because I was talking to my brother and I was like, oh, I finished my book. Like, this has the most realistic depiction of living in a dorm on a college campus that I've ever seen in any media. Maybe that just means I'm not consuming a whole lot of college media, which is very possibly the case, but I loved this. I feel like these characters were just so raw and real. They weren't like fictionalized to be better versions of themselves. Like, these are real people that you would meet and like real issues that you would have with them. And I just like, oh my God, there was this one instance where I don't want to give too much away, because I really feel like going into this knowing next to nothing other than very real, raw depictions of like complicated characters. That's really all you need to know. And if that's not for you, then it's not for you. But this was a 4.5, possibly a 5-star. This I would recommend to someone who loves a character-driven story and who likes complicated, messy characters, because that's what this is. It has very little plot. Like, there definitely is a plot, but it's very small, and it's a very small part of it. Really, we're focusing on the characters and how the decisions that they make and that are made for them are the driving forces in who they end up being as people. So really, really love this. And that brings us to the end of this video. So thank you so much for being here. Again, I'll have my review for Inner Space linked down below. I don't know when I'll write my actual written review of Come and Get It, but if it's written before this video goes up, I'll also put that in the description if you want to check it out. I really appreciate you being here. I hope that you are reading good things for Buzzwordathon this month. If you are participating in Buzzwordathon, I would love to know what you're reading this month, what you read in previous months. I would just love to know if you're participating, because there's not that many people that like I follow and that I interact with that I know are participating. I watch Books and Lala's videos every month, but I don't know really of many other people who are making like monthly content about this reading challenge. So if you are, or you know someone who is, or you're even just participating, I would love to know. But otherwise, that is the end of this video. I hope you like, comment, subscribe, and I hope to see you in another video again soon. Bye.